Thank you for joining us. Let's begin with our first conversation for today. The Nigerian Immigration Service has increased passport fees effective September 1, 2025. The new fees are 100,000 naira for a 32-page passport and 200,000 naira for a 64-page passport. Critics argue that this hike is unaffordable for many Nigerians, particularly given the current national minimum wage of 70,000 naira. The increased fee is equivalent to 143% of a worker's monthly minimum wage, making Nigeria's passport fees the highest relative cost in the world. This policy decision has sparked outrage, with many questioning its impact on international travel, education, business, and family reunification. Passports are seen as gateways to opportunity, not luxury items, many have said. Nweke, Global Affairs Analyst, joins me from Brussels in Belgium for more on this. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure to be with you, Perpetua. Thank you for having me.
All right, this is the second increase we're saying in less than a year, or let's say in a year, because the one that came in last year took effect on September 1st, and this is another September 1st, or yesterday was another September 1st when another one took effect. Now, let me first get your reaction to the frequency of increase in prices, and if there is any economic mathematics that can sort of explain what we're saying now.
Perpetua, this issue actually defies logic. You see, I mean, I can smile or maybe even laugh talking about it today, because today is the day after. I mean, yesterday it took effect and we were all furious. I mean, you can't really imagine. But the thing is, I mean, we're now taking the time to, begin to look into it more in depth, but also try to see it from the government perspective. But I tell you something I woke up with this morning, and that is the fact that no matter how, from which perspective we see it, from the perspective of the common man who has, actually been disadvantaged by this hike, or from the perspective of the government that wants to, raise revenue, one fact remains obvious, and that is the fact that, when passport costs 143% of, minimum wage, it is an aberration. In Germany, a passport costs just 3.5% of the monthly wage. In the US, is 14%. And how can Nigeria justify for 143%? And like you rightly pointed out, this is happening within 18 months period, or okay, let's even say 2 years. So doesn't that speak to policy inconsistency and all of that? So yes, we can look at it from the reason government is doing this, and you can also ask the question of are they breaking any international code or international law? No, they are not. Countries are free to set their passport fees, as they deem fit. But they are expected to be reasonable, to be logical, and all of that. So this is absolutely illogical.
Okay. While you were speaking earlier, you talked about raised revenue. I'm wondering if that should be the reason for this sort of hike. Because when you look at the press release or the statement that was issued by the government, they were talking about things like wanting to make it better, wanting to improve it, and all of that. And to my mind, I was thinking maybe this had a thing or two to do with the cost of living. Maybe it had a thing maybe not cost of living. Maybe it had a thing or two to do with, the hike and the prices of goods and services. Maybe their vendors are asking for more money to do certain things. Well, what do you think that could be? I mean, I want us to look back, September 1st, 2024 to September 1st, 2025. Has anything substantially changed, whether it's with respect to inflation or any other of these macroeconomic indicators that could warrant that sort of increase?
The only thing that has changed, Perpetua, is government's appetite to raise as much revenue as possible, mainly on the back of, hardworking, ordinary Nigerians. Some of them don't even have a job. And some of them actually need this passport that they are being locked away from to be able to better their future, because if you are not mobile, you are not going to be able to do anything in a world that has become a global village as of today. Now, so it is being driven essentially by government's appetite to raise revenue. You can see it all over the place, where government has actually declared that ministries, departments, and agencies would have to be, as a matter of duty, would have to be raising revenue. I mean, we may not have any quarrel with that, but the point is that there are other ways of raising revenues. For instance, we have a lot of wastages in Nigeria. Let us even start with the National Assembly, those that make the law, and the sort of wastage that goes on there. Look at the vehicle they drive. We hear of houses being renovated that don't necessarily need to be renovated, and all sorts of wastage is going on. Let them start from there, and when you do, you'll find that there is enough money in Nigeria to go around such that a passport should not cost, following international standard, more than 10,500 naira, which is between 10 to 15% of minimum wage. That is reasonable, but that is not happening in this case.
That's reasonable, just like you said, but the question is that going to happen? When will that happen? Do Nigerian leaders even think that's something that should be looked into? I mean, who should push for this to happen? Who should push for this to become a thing? Now, let's look at the fact that, this is not being charged to diasporans. I mean, the fee for those in diaspora is unchanged. What do you make of that?
Well, what I make of that is that in the last review, the diaspora has been squeezed very, very dry. And just in case people are not aware, what the diaspora is paying is equivalent of 450,000 naira. Isn't that double of the highest amount that is being paid that has now been hiked, already? So, I mean, they have kind of reached the ceiling as far as diaspora is concerned. And so when they announce that the diaspora is not included, it creates that impression that, oh, this is a diaspora-loving government and they are being reasonable. No, they have just, gotten to the limit. Now, there are other things, we also need to see it from government, perspective, one way or the other. Because setting the price in other countries, they consider quite a number of things, government objectives. They consider also production and security, fees or expenses, and then also the cost of technology. Now, we can give this to the current, Minister of the Interior. He has actually digitized and actually made the process, in his department very, very much technology driven. These things cost money. There is absolutely no doubt about that. And so there is this appetite also to even make it more technologically driven. That is beautiful. But I do think that somehow the minister, who is very innovative, very creative, is stuck. He's stuck in the sense that government is probably not providing him the sort of matching funds, the subsidy that he needs to be able to implement what he needs to implement to internationalize even more Nigeria's, passport. And so he had no other option than to, put the price on the end users, which is, the everyday Nigerian. Now, the only thing we can hope for is as follows, Perpetua, that government can sit back and say to themselves, now, we are promoting mobility of Nigerians. That is, they are encouraging Nigerians to take up jobs, opportunities wherever they are. They are not a government that separates families, because there are situations where some families, live abroad and others are in Nigeria and they want to reunite. There are situations where Nigerians want, after their first degree, maybe even their fourth degree, they want other experiences and all of that. They want to go abroad to study. Now, you don't have to be a millionaire to be able to afford, all of these basic things. And Nigeria, as a government, actually encourages this sort of movements. But when you set your passport price so high, you have inadvertently locked these opportunities out, for these people. And then there is a need then for government to now begin to think of, well, there must be somewhere that some wastages are taking place that we can actually save some money from and then pump it into the Ministry of the Interior, the Nigeria Immigration Service, so that those who can afford the high price would pay the high price, not a problem. There are certain categories of people, for instance, young people, students, certain levels of retirees, theirs could be subsidized. In other countries, it is done. So maybe that's what Nigeria should start thinking about now, so that it is fair and just, but ultimately a good thing for Nigeria in terms of, economic development.
Right. Two things I need to point out from what you have said so far. Number one, you talked about, having a situation where maybe based on where one belongs, you can probably pay less. But the question would be, does Nigeria have reputable, reliable data to make that happen? Because you need data to be able to know these are the people who fall within this range or that range, and then be able to effectively implement such a policy.
We use not to have reliable data. But over the last years, let me say even up to a decade, Nigeria has implemented the biometrics, data passport regime, which is of international standard. Every day it keeps improving, and what I see from the work of the Minister of the Interior is that he is trying to be in tune with the rest of the world. As a matter of fact, there are some African countries, as of today, even when his new set of plans have not been implemented, that they are playing catch-up with Nigeria. So as far as data reliability is concerned, as it relates to passports, Nigeria has supremely been sanitized. And so that grows the confidence in our travel document. There was a time, Perpetua, when it was possible for an individual to own more than 2 passports. That is now a thing of the past. And so our passports at this moment are machine readable, just like those of the EU, those of the United States of America, and so on and so forth. So you could fault Nigeria in any other thing, but as of today, not on the genuinity of the Nigerian passport. And that what I see is that the Minister of the Interior is trying to do more, and then by doing more, continue to increase the confidence in the Nigerian passport. But they have overlooked other human-centered elements in considering this particular passport fee hike.
All right, I wasn't really talking about the genuinity or otherwise of the passport. I was looking at, unique identifiers, because you talked about students having to pay maybe a particular amount, while the rich, the wealthy, will be able to afford certain amounts. So I was looking at, do we have that unique identifier where we're able to tell, someone's maybe where someone belongs in terms of socio-economic status? That was what I was referring to. But of course, let's move away from that. Don't you think that to a very large extent, when it comes to aviation, traveling by air and all that, things around that are usually sort of seen as luxury in Nigeria? And so whether you want to talk about the fares, that's airfares, or you want to talk about passport or anything within that area, it's always more expensive and seemingly unreachable for the everyday Nigerian. Do you think this is some attachment of luxury?
No. Being mobile, being able to own a document that makes it possible for you to travel from one country to the other without let or hindrance is not a luxury. As a matter of fact, Perpetua, it is the human rights of every Nigerian to not only have access to such, document, but also that it is affordable for every Nigerian. That is why in every country of the world, the minimum wage is taken into consideration in actually setting the price for a passport. Now, the argument of government in this specific case is elitist. And I tell you something, Perpetua, they have to tell Nigerians something. They have to actually justify why the passport is, as expensive as they have made it. And just any reason as far as they are concerned will go. So what I'm saying is, I mean, if you are not ready to rescind, this new, price regime, at least do something that will make it, possible for those who can afford it to afford it, but those who can't, because it is not a luxury. Going to study abroad or taking up a job because you are talented, you are a young, talented, man or woman without a deep pocket, but you find a job outside the shores of Nigeria, you haven't started making the money, but the passport becomes, the gatekeeper that stops you from accessing that opportunity out there. And let's not forget, Perpetua, when you are out there doing that job, you become part of that vanguard of Nigerians in diaspora that are remitting annually, and I'm talking of just 2024, that remitted 23 billion US dollars to Nigeria. That is the singular highest foreign currency earning for Nigeria as a country. Now, why would you then take policies that will actually, apply a brake to such a revenue stream? Yes, your goal is to increase the revenues. This is simply short-sighted.
All right. Before I let you go, I have just about 30 seconds with you. Isn't it ironic that the federal government could always come up and increase service fees for a lot of its services while it stops, private individuals from doing the same?
Well, that is the irony, because government ought to live by example. They need to show that this is doable. We are a government, we are doing it, and then we are encouraging the private sector to do so. Where encouragement doesn't work, they can then compel the private sector to do that. But right now, government lacks that moral authority to enforce some of those, things that are considered to be fair, because they are actually doing the exact opposite.
All right. Thank you so much, Collins Nweke, Global Affairs Analyst, for your time and your thoughts on the show today.